Congressman, thank you so much for your time. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. And you kind of walked into the conversation we were having. You get the news with the federal task force arriving in Memphis. There's been talk about whether or not Jackson might be on the horizon for that. Do you ever look around and wonder how did we get to this point where we're worried about safety in our own cities, and we've got leaders who are openly letting criminals go free and almost condoning the activity?
And we shouldn't be surprised by that this was going to be the ultimate outcome. I mean, we've seen this is something that has progressed for several years now, where you've got progressive prosecutors who don't want to do their job and actually hold people accountable for their actions. You've got cashless bail systems where people are arrested sometimes for very serious crimes who are back on the street in just mere hours. We've decriminalized theft in many cases. We've decriminalized the use of certain narcotics. And so this was something that I think many of us saw coming. And we shouldn't be surprised now that we see lawlessness and we now have to have the military go in to assist local law enforcement to restore law and order. And look, that's one of the things. Public safety is one of the most important things when you're talking to an individual. They want to be able to feel safe. They want to be able to know that their family is safe, their wife, their children, that when they go to work, they're going to come home, their house is not going to be burglarized. And people often flood to areas where there is public safety and people feel safe. That's one of the reasons I think here in the Jackson metro area, you've seen a boom in Rankin and Madison County. They are known for public safety, and people are leaving high crime areas such as Hinds County and moving to Rankin and Madison to feel safe. And so that is what we're seeing playing out across the country. We shouldn't be surprised, and I'm glad to see that the president is willing to step in to use federal resources to restore law and order in many of the places across the country.
The thing that is, I think we've seen National Guard goes to Los Angeles, and the civil unrest that's happening there ends almost overnight with a strong presence. Washington, D.C., we've seen the crime statistics drop dramatically since National Guard had a presence there. Memphis is an interesting challenge, or it's an interesting case study, because it's not just the National Guard. It's this task force of FBI and DEA and ATF and local law enforcement and multiple government agencies. And I have no doubt that they can clean up drastically the issues in Memphis. But what you mentioned a second ago with district attorneys and judges, are they going to keep these criminals in jail? Or is it just going to go right back to how it was?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, with the surge of resources, you will see a decrease in crime rates. You will see that people will feel safer. But those federal resources, they're not going to be there forever. At some point, those individuals are going to return to their homes, are going to be redeployed to other places across the country. Yeah. And so places like Memphis, places like Washington, D.C., they've got to be prepared once these federal resources leave to be able to keep up the fight. And we can't return back to what we saw before they arrived. So you've got to have an investment within the police departments, the sheriff's departments. They've got to be additional officers who are hired. And look, the prosecutors are so key to this. As a former prosecutor, I can tell you that you can have the best law enforcement in the entire world. They can go out and they can make great cases and they can arrest people and they can solve crimes. But if those people are not being prosecuted in a court of law, if they're not being held accountable, if they're just being booked and processed and then released or brought in and put on probation with no consequences, it is not going to have a long-term impact. And so the judicial system has to be a portion of this and a big portion of solving the problems in these high-crime urban areas that we see across the country.
Michael Guest is my guest, U.S. Congressman representing Mississippi's 3rd District. We visited with your brother-in-law yesterday, Mike Ezel, your colleague from just down the road. And he was not under the impression that this this government shutdown was going to last all that long. No, it was not on the record as saying, it's going to be over in 3 days, but he said, hearing from Republican leadership, House leadership, it doesn't feel like this is going to be an extended shutdown. Do you agree with that, or do you have a different opinion?
I tell you that there is a pathway. There's a pathway to very quickly in the shutdown, and that would be that Democrats come to the table. They do what they did over a dozen times during the Biden-Harris administration, that they support a clean short-term CR, and they reopen the government. That's ultimately going to be for Chuck Schumer to decide there in the Senate as to how long he wants to play these political games. And look, Richard, I view this as a politically driven shutdown. This is not an issue-driven shutdown. Democrats have tried to claim that this is about health care, but this is about the fact that Chuck Schumer is very fearful of a primary challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that the far left is pushing him day and night to stand up to the Trump administration. And so I believe that the shutdown will probably go well into next week. If I were to put an over-under number on it, I would say about 10 days. I think as we get maybe to the end of next week, we will see enough pressure has ratcheted up on the Democrats that they will relent and that they will reopen the government. But again, this is politically driven, and getting out of this shutdown is going to depend upon when the Democrat Party feels enough political pressure that they have caused enough damage to the economy that they relent and open the government, just like they've done, again, 12-plus times when President Biden was in office. This is nothing new. The Democrats, again, are appeasing the far-left base that have pushed them into this shutdown. And it's going to be up to them to decide when they're ready to get out.
All right, you just gave us a touch of Washington inside baseball, and I'm going to push you a little farther on that. You said Chuck Schumer is fearful of an AOC primary challenge. All right, so I started thinking about that when you said that. So you're talking about AOC running for Chuck Schumer's running for Chuck Schumer's Senate seat, and my initial thought is, she'd beat the brakes off of him. It wouldn't even be close. His favorability numbers in New York are so low, and even though she's kind of crazy, people that vote for her seem to like her a lot. But then I thought about the fact that Mitch McConnell's been challenged a lot, and these guys and gals that have been in the Senate for a really, really long time, there's a cockroach tendency to there. Like, you can't ever quite get rid of them. Is there any hope that Chuck Schumer would have in beating AOC if she were to come after him in a primary?
I think it's going to depend on where a lot of these progressive groups line up. I mean, you would think that just looking at the politics, that they would be much more likely to line up behind Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez than they would Chuck Schumer. But you also have to remember that Chuck Schumer is the minority leader. And if the Senate were to flip, he would become once again the majority leader. And so he has a great deal of influence in his current position that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would not have. If she came in, she would be a ranking-file member of the United States Senate. She would not serve in that leadership capacity that has taken Chuck Schumer decades to be able to work up to the position that he is in now. So I think right now there's a couple of different dynamics that are coming into play. But I think if Chuck Schumer loses those progressive organizations, if they don't see him as willing to stand up to President Trump, willing to fight, willing to do their bidding, then I think he sees that race very quickly turns in favor of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and that his chances of winning drop dramatically.
Wow. 30 seconds left. I know that's a tough ask. How do you balance the need for smaller government being a Republican priority with compassion for those who may be losing their jobs because of the shutdown?
Republicans have said forever that we want to shrink the size and scope of government. You do that by cutting regulations. You do that by getting rid of unnecessary spending. And you also do that by shrinking the federally bloated federal workforce. So if there are people whose jobs are truly non-essential, non-necessary, then that would be a cost-saving mechanism and a way for Republicans to carry out that core message of shrinking the size and scope of government. And so this is an opportunity, particularly at this shutdown drags on for a long period of time for Republicans to begin to accomplish that.
Congressman Guest, thank you so much for your time this morning. Always good catching up.